include fiscal resources, human resources, realistic expectations, and code revisions. If you don't mind, because the Marshal's office has been left off, could we please start with them, just for them to give you an overview of their relationship as it revolves specifically surrounding vacant lots and any other code matters needed?
Okay. Sounds good. If anybody from the Marshal's Department want to speak towards, I guess, your responsibility overview. And thank you. I didn't mention this earlier, but thank you for all the employees that are here and taking part in this, as well as my colleagues. I think Ms. Dowse told us last week that she was a little upset because this was the quickest workshop that we've ever put together. But anyway, just want to thank you all, and I know that just by your presence that this is important to you just as it is to us. All right.
Well, thank you. Clean and safe, right? Okay. So our involvement is we investigate litter complaints, illegal dumping complaints. Oftentimes these do happen on vacant lots where we have to send it over for cleanup because, of course, we investigate it and we want the citizens to understand that we follow through and request those work orders, and we always follow up with them. Same as with a median or a occupied home or vacant property. It's just the. But do you want to know just about the vacant lots or any of the right-of-ways?
Basically, we want to know what you guys actually do, like in regards to when it comes to grass cleanups, helping out with citing residents, businesses, whatever.
So upon the investigation, of course, we perform enforcement on these individuals if we can identify who the violator is. If we're not able to do that, then we certainly send the work orders over through 311 to the, we ask 311 to send it to the appropriate department, albeit engineering or code enforcement, whatever the case may be, whoever cleans it up. We also have started a new program called Sweat with the Vet. We'll just throw this in here since you're letting us do this. Sweat with the Vet is in collaboration with a lot of the other departments that are here today. We assist individuals who are elderly and unable to take care of their overgrown properties, and we have retired veterans go in and clean those properties up.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, also, I think I would add that if we had a little bigger overview, if we took a 40,000-foot view of this, we deal with things both reactively and proactively. Reactively through 311 or reactively through a complaint possibly from one of you. You have some situation you want us to look at. But a lot of our efforts are proactive, and a couple of the folks that are behind me here, Lieutenant Billman and Sergeant Ashley, are part of that enforcement team. So there's actually a two-pronged approach to what we do. So if you have any...
And I think y'all left off a big part of one of the ways that you help us out.
He's getting into that now, the probation cleanup.
The probation cleanup.
Well, not even the probation cleanup, but the getting all of the signs off of the corners. I know y'all do quite a few sweeps.
That's very much a constant. I think that Sergeant Ashley told me last week, I think we got, what, 481 signs up?
481 signs were removed on the right-of-way.
I was just saying that for the couple up here.
How many were doing what?
From the ditch and not doing anything, that is a property owner responsibility. And easement property owned by the property owner. Augusta has only right to use that land at that strip for that purpose. For example, if we have drainage easement, we cannot put the sewer line in it. We had to go back and get the easement for the sewer line. So that's on that. And then, Augusta-owned off-road properties are really like this municipal building, some of the other places, parking lot, all that, And then Canal Authority has some of the responsibilities on the first level canal, and then privately on that. So I just briefly touch on the legal notes, at least that's my research shows, that the creek, for example, which most of the call, like in District 2, we get about the creeks, is owned by the property owner, and property owner is really responsible for its general upkeep of that area. And I work in the Griffin or Columbia County, and that's what, even by their legals, I've been told when I was there, Then level of service. really, expectation is the level A service. And we can meet that expectation, but it's going to tie to the resources, and I'm going to get to that. And so it's not only from this body, but it's from the citizens, from both sides. The expectation is, and also, Augusta has 308 square mile area. So it's a large area to cover. And then allocated resources, and the level of service really varies. What engineering does, some we have proactive program, like we have schedule, all that. So to me, that's level A, but some we are reactive. So it's all the way go to D, and even some maybe even below D, but in general, Same as the vacant lot. Right now, really, it's tied to the resource. We have 350,000 allocated to this. So it's somewhere C to D, but that level can be increased with the more resource. So I do have another sheet really kind of touching the resource and what's maybe needed. So I will kind of get that out once I finish this one. Yeah, then again, Augusta-owned properties is varies depending on the department, and then the land bank roughly is a rough number. I think it's 596. They do maintain it to the level they have funds, and after funds are, I think, disappear, then they don't own it. So here, no, this is different.
All right. Anything else you want to add to this, Dr. Malik or Oscar or Charlie? Or is that just your overview?
Okay. Well, one more thing I really wanted to get before I get to the resources. This is the.
Well, I think the resource part's going to come in the next section when we talk about challenges. This is just kind of the general overview of what it is that you're responsible for cutting, maintaining, and upkeep.
Yeah, so engineering is responsible, engineering environmental services. We are responsible in the right-of-way, vegetation and landscape area. Previously, Park and Rec were responsible certain areas, landscape within the median. So this body made that decision about 2 years ago. So now that is fully transferred to engineering this year, and I appreciate everybody working and allocating resources for this year. So we're working through that to get it fully going, that part on that. So that's all. Vacant lot is also engineering environmental services. And right now it's $350,000 tied to this, and that's the reason. And we spread that $350 throughout the year, and it's $6,000 a week per crew. So that's where we are. And detention ponds is also that. So we're cutting once a year. I know we get requests really, and the desire is to cut it twice a year, but even once a year cut is $750,000 on that. But one of the really thing I wanted to bring attention to this body is this map is kind of, you can use it as a template. It's 1853 or 59 map, and you see there highlighted area. There are alleys between all those, and those are undeveloped areas, all vegetation, and we getting called to maintain those alleys that it has no use, no purpose. My understanding is these were created that time for the service instead of, really. But the example I was giving, the milkman don't have to go on the road. He or she can go from this alley and serve it from the back door. But these alleys, really, we need to consider and abandon it to those property owners because it has no use for the city. And since it's owned by the city, we begin to get called, hey, you need to cut this alley. And even you look at, there are, I don't know, even I didn't count it. It's all over the place on this. Each and every block has 2-3 alleys on that.
So, Dr. Malik, are these what we would consider right now to be vacant? Just basically like blocks upon blocks of vacant properties, vacant lots.
Yeah, it's in between two lots. There's a back, alley, maybe 10, 20 feet for the whole block, which runs. So,
So if we're like over in the Bethlehem neighborhood, we'd be talking something like in the Johnson Avenue area and Mill Street, those side streets that's in those neighborhoods is what we're talking about?
yes, sir. Yeah, there are several on Central Avenue, all that. We've been in for the
Harrisburg,
past
all
two,
that.
3 years because the developer came and they want to develop. So, yes, and still, we would go through the appraisal process, but it's very kind of nominal cost.
So according to this mowing schedule here, I count 5 companies doing right-of-way maintenance. Is that about accurate? Around 5 contracted to do right-of-way maintenance? Am I
Yes,
reading that
sir.
correctly?
The information, in front of you, that's accurate information. And those are our entryways or arterial connectors, all that other thing.
And 5 is enough. You believe that that's enough to get you where you want to go as far as service level? 5 for right-of-ways is enough.
So the right of way, these 5 cover, yes, sir. Yeah, we have once a month cut
Okay.
during season from March to October. So that's enough for that.
So as far as
area.
vacant lots go, though, is where I want to get a little, and correct me, slow me down if I'm going too far, if we want to wait. But I want to talk a little bit about the vacant lots because, like Commissioner Pulliam says, a lot of the costs that we get are about vacant lots. And other than just sometimes having trouble to know who to contact, we know now who to contact. And I've been doing it quite often. I see all y'all shaking your heads, yes. But would it make sense to actually start contracting some of these vacant lots out to other companies to be able to keep a regular schedule going, just like we have with the right-of-way schedule, so that we'll know instead of us having to call in a lot 2 or 3 times a year, we just already have those lots on schedule to be cut. And if it causes us to have to add additional dollars to contract more people, is that something that you would suggest that we do? Because I think that would make sense. And then also supporting in-house cutting crews when we need to as well. But I think, like, for instance, there's a lot right now in Harrisburg that is consistently having to be called in. It's on Ellis Street. I call in all the time. But if it was on a schedule, just like this, I think that will eliminate us having to always have a call in or email it to you or Charlie or somebody. What do you think about that?
Yes, sir. So that's on my other page, somewhere in the middle. It touched the vacant lot. So, and we have that discussion a couple of months back at this floor, and Charlie can explain. So yes, if additional resources added, definitely we will add more contractor, and we will have a proactive schedule to get those lots cut.
And you'll be using in-house.
Yeah, because right now it's
contract?
350. So we just spread out like over the year, like 6,000 a week. So that's what really.
So that's why we have
That's
to
why,
keep
yeah.
calling in. Okay. Okay, thank you. Can you leave that up for me, please, so I can see this? I need to locate it. Where is that page? Do you see that page?
She just backed it up. You have an extra copy?
I have it. It's a lot of paper up here. I found it.
All
Thank
these-
you.
All these trees were cutting
A lot
down.
of trees.
All right. Any further questions? Did anybody need any clarification on, like, how we handle right-of-ways versus vacant lots?
You don't have this one? Come in your book.
All right. I guess we will go to Richmond County Correctional Institute. Warden, good to see you.
Likewise. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Afternoon.
So we provide support by means of inmate labor to various departments. Specifically, we have 24 details that are assigned to various departments, engineering being one of them, utilities, the cemeteries, which we got sole control over, DOT contract, they pay for the officer's salary, Board of Education, Central Service, and the fire department once they get their crew back together. So as it relates specifically to our discussion, engineering maintenance is assigned 11 details. Now, we only provide the details to the departments. The only time we'll step in is if an elected official calls us or if a citizen called and said there's a potential safety issue, then we will step in and give the department notice. So that's the extent of our involvement with the grass cutting. It's basically a support role.
And on a daily basis, how many crews are you able to actually dispatch across the city?
Right.
Well, let me rephrase that. How many are budgeted versus how many do you actually have staffed?
Okay, we're budgeted for 24, and I'm pleased to say we're fully staffed right now.
Oh.
For
That may be first time in my 6
detail
years.
officers. And I want to add that, I'm glad you mentioned that, Administrator. Thanks to this body for increasing the salary the first part of this year, we actually have a waiting list for detail officers. So that's helped tremendously. Specifically for the 24.
So you're saying we can call you more?
Well, well, I think there's a little bit more to it than that, Commissioner.
No, I'm messing with you.
But yeah, of the 24 currently, 4 is waiting to go to school right now. So once we get those certified, we could have them out with details. But I think on average, right now we're working with all the departments. Average is about 14, 10. It varies. Sometimes they go to training. Sometimes they're out sick. But that's the average number we're sending out.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Are there any questions up here for Warden Joseph? Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Parks and Rec. Our interim director / deputy administrator / I don't know how many slashes you have right now. Mr. Jackson, good to see you.
You should have in your packet sort of an overview of the vegetation maintenance for Parks and Rec. I'll just go to the contractor section. We have 2 contractor vendors, Jacobs Landing, and also we have Rise and Shine Cutting. So mainly these 2 contractors work on a bi-weekly schedule. As you can see from the schedule, week 1 and week 2, we have those particular parks that each one that they serve. We feel that this has been very effective. Based on my 4 months in the position, I haven't had any particular concerns about using our contractors. As you can see the footnote at the bottom of the page in terms of the scope of work, we do the mowing, we do the trimming, we do hedging and weeding. So the scope of work also includes tree limbs and things of that nature. In terms of in-house expertise and crews, we have 11 full-time employees. And as you can see, we have a Monday through Friday schedule. This is where it becomes a little more specialized. As you can see, the boathouse is on Friday. We have Moore Cemetery on Wednesday and the soccer complex on Tuesday. In terms of expectations, this is mainly our on-schedule activities, but there are also we have off-schedule activities. Now we get a lot of calls about the river walk and places like that, and we try to, for special events, we want to make sure that when commissioners call or citizens call, we want to make sure we're very proactive and respond quickly. In terms of challenges, one of the things that staff has brought to me in my time there is that we want to make sure that when we have these special requests or off-schedule requests, sometimes we have to pull crews away for special events, and sometimes that sort of throws us off schedule. So if I had to make a request or a plea for additional resources would be to maybe have a specialized crew for special events, so we can maybe designate a team of people for that particular event, and that way we can maintain our on-schedule events as planned.
And also, do you currently utilize any of the crews from the warden?
Not this year, we do not.
Okay.
Commissioner, as an aside to your question about the inmate crews for for Parks and Recreation, you may recall we reallocated crews from Parks and Recreation specifically to handle the cemeteries. So that was an agreement, an internal agreement, which the commission approved.
Well, and that's the clarification I was trying to get to, is the fact that we did, specifically put them in a place where I know a lot of us were getting calls year after year, week after week about the cemeteries, and I can say I have not gotten any calls about
That's
cemeteries.
correct. I wanted to.
I'm glad you said that. I haven't gotten a call this year so far.
Well, but we are awaiting grass to be planted in the cemetery, so, but yes, the warden has made some great strides in that arena. I also wanted to bring your attention to some right-of-way changes that we made in which Parks and Recreation was once responsible for right-of-ways versus their own parks facilities. Those responsibilities have been shifted to the engineering department.
All right, thank you, Administrator. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
I have a question. So now are all of the right-of-ways, this is not necessarily for Parks and Recs, just in general to what Administrator Dowse just said. So now are all right-of-ways under engineering?
Yes, ma'am. All right-of-ways are under the engineering department, yes. Dr. Malik, is that correct?
All right.
So the individuals that are now speaking to you, they manage the separate areas. If you look at Dr. Malik's sheet regarding upkeep responsibilities, some departments are responsible for certain Augusta-owned properties. So that's who's speaking to you now.
And before I call up the next department, is there a reason why code enforcement also isn't here?
Code enforcement is here, sir. They're just not on. They're just not on the listing for responsibility overview, because the main course was just to talk about cutting grass and maintenance. So they were not listed on the agenda, but we do have a representative from code enforcement here if you would need to speak with them.
Marshall's department doesn't cut grass, so.
Well, but they were specifically listed on the agenda item to be present. That's the only difference.
Okay. All right. Well, I think Central Services up next. You can pick whichever podium you want to come to.
Good afternoon to everybody present. My name is Maria Rivera, and I'm with Central Services. I'm actually the deputy for facilities there. Central Services has the responsibility for cutting and maintaining only city properties. So we have two crews. We have a crew that is in-house. That one is 6 employees from the city. We have 1 supervisor and 5 grounds keepers. We work within that crew. We service 13 properties, which are listed in, I believe you have a one-page summary of what we do. So, and that is done every week from Monday through Friday. We also have contractors. We have 3 contractors that actually work with 9 of the properties that we have here in the city. That includes 4 properties that are from the library department. That's more or less what Central Services does, if you have any questions.
Okay. And so with the on staff and the contracted workers that you have, are you utilizing any of the warden's help?
No.
Okay. Do you feel that your staff and the contractors are able to adequately handle these?
At this time, yes, we are.
Okay. Are there any questions up here for? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I guess we'll call the fire. I'm just. It is so interesting to watch which podiums the different departments go to. I'm just saying, it's just.
Good afternoon. Well, the fire department, we do have a crew from RCCI, and we have a dedicated staff member.
Can you introduce yourself in case?
I'm sorry. My name is LaRon Beasley. I'm the Deputy Chief of Technical Services of the Augusta Fire Department.
Thanks, sir.
All right. The fire department's extent of cutting grass, we maintain the facilities that we own and operate. We have a dedicated staff member with a crew from RCCI that takes care of all our stations and other buildings like administration, training facility, and things of that nature. When that person's on vacation, out sick or something like that, then the firefighters themselves, we take the trailer to them with the lawn equipment, and they will mow the lawn at the fire station if need be, if he's going to be out for an extended period of time.
Okay. Do each of the fire stations also take care of parts of their grounds? I know at one point RCCI did part and the firefighters did some of it.
Yes. So basically what we do, the stations with the larger lots, we come out on we have RCCI crew and our men go out and they take care of the big part of it. And then where they can mow it all down, and sometimes the firefighters will weed eat around the building and do a little weed plucking in the flower beds and things like that. And we do that because we just have one man for all 19 stations, and we try to keep them on a regular rotation and don't get behind. So some of the larger lots take up more time than others, of course.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
All right.
All right, thanks, sir. All righty. Is anybody here? Yes, ma'am.
I'll speak to utilities because I don't see that their representative received the meeting invite.
Uh-oh.
But Augusta Utilities, they do have a contractor that maintains their lots. They have property on Fort Gordon as well as their water treatment plants. And so they do not currently receive RCCI support for grass cutting services, but they do manage their own.
So basically just their facilities.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions in regards to utilities? Okay.
I have a question, but I don't know if this pertains to part one or if we're going to get to it when we get to part two.
We'll ask it and we'll see.
Okay, awesome. So, a lot of, so out of the 90% I said I got, probably 89% of those are for privately owned
So that code
lots.
enforcement?
Yeah. So it's a huge portion. It's not really that much, but a lot of them are for privately owned lots, either privately owned or lots that, you know, the city owns, but for the most part, privately owned. So as far as that's concerned, the proper steps, and also I think for the general public, for our constituents, letting them know that the city, well, I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
So yes, what do we do about?
Well, can we ask code enforcement to come up? Because I think some of
Yes.
this may be able to be answered by them.
Yes, that would be great.
All right. Because we can add you in under H. Well, thank you for being here. Can you
Hi.
introduce yourself?
I'm Donna Tyrus, Supervisor in Code Enforcement.
All right. And I think you may have heard the questions from Commissioner Pulliam. I think she was asking, what, you know, in regards to code enforcement and vacant lots that are privately owned, what is it that you are able to help with there?
Vacant lots, we don't, we will try to contact who may own the property, and once we do that, if we make contact, then we'll have them, you know, cut the grass. But if we cannot make contact, then it goes to environmental services to be cut.
And so in regards to that transfer, what is the time frame that's usually involved in getting the grass or just that lot cut? What is the time frame there? Do you know?
Once we receive the complaint, and then if we're handling it and we got somebody, it's like within 10 days.
And
Also, if it's occupied, yes.
what's that?
Someone said something, if it was occupied, we would handle those.
Okay. And so is a majority of the work that you do for the occupied lots versus the unoccupied? Or-
Majority, yes.
Okay.
Always.
Okay.
Is there a limit as a follow-up? Like, are there a certain number of times that you will come out to cut a privately owned lot, either you or environmental services?
Okay, we don't cut it all, but we if they cut the property and gain compliance, we close out the case. If we're called out there again, it depends on how many times we're called, the span of time, if we would have like a repeat offender or something like that. But most of the time, if they cut and clean, and then we get called out again, we start a new case, they cut and clean, and that's how we handle that.
So there is no minimum, or there's rather not minimum, there's no maximum. At one point, I believe someone
I think it
told me.
was like 3 times.
3 times.
I don't have it in front of me right now,
Okay.
but yeah, 3 times. And it's a time span between for the repeat offenders. So I don't have it in front of me exactly the times, but it is up to 3 times.
So I guess that leads me to, at some point, policies and procedures. You know, it goes back to that, because if it's 3 times in the summer months in Augusta, Georgia, that grass is going to grow up in 3 weeks. And so even when you're talking about the span between March and September, October, really, that's a lot of months. So the lots that are privately owned lots that are repeat offenders, we're not going to go out to cut them every 2 to 3 weeks. But in about 4 weeks, so once a month, they really need to be cut. So then how do we address that, and how do we begin to, craft that policy to address it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you, I have a question for you. Thank you for what you do. Taking the tour with you a few months ago really shed a light on just how extensive your job is and the work that you're attempting to do. So we appreciate you.
Thank you.
So can you walk me through the process? And so when I call and say lot X needs to be cut, and it's a private owner who owns that, can you walk me through the very first thing that y'all do? You take that property and then you try to contact the owner, right?
Right.
You contact the owner and say you have how many days to rectify the issue?
10.
10 days to rectify the issue, okay? If they don't have the issue taken care of within those 10 days, then what comes next?
Then they will be issued a citation.
Okay, and the citation, I'm guessing, is some type of fee
Court
that's
citation
applied?
for court,
Okay.
to go to court.
So 10 days, then court, and after they go to court, the judge will decide whether they have to cut it or what happens in court.
Well, the judge would, either, sentence them if they don't do it. Sometimes they continue it and allow them time to get it done, and they could put them in jail as well.
So, wow, okay. Is that being enforced? Like, are they actually,
Yes, we've had people go to jail for that.
really? Okay. So how long does it take between the time that you get the citation and for the court date to be given to you, on
So we
average?
usually do 2 weeks out if we're writing the citation. We're even giving them 2 more weeks to, get it, to gain compliance, and sometimes that works as well. But we're supposed to do 2 weeks out because of the courts having the amount of, people that they put on the docket. So we do 2 weeks.
So that, you're
So that's
basically
6 weeks.
6 weeks to get to court from that first,
No, 10 days and then 2 weeks.
10 days and then 2 weeks.
but I thought you
Okay.
said you give them an additional 2 weeks.
No, that's if the judge gives it to them in court.
So the
If-
judge can continue it?
Yes, the judge could continue it, but
Okay,
we
so
don't.
let's,
But during that time, grass still isn't getting cut, right?
Yes, sir, sometimes. Mhm.
okay.
Is
And
there not a,
sometimes if they go to jail, nothing gets done either. So we have to go again.
is there
Maybe
not
the
a
warden can help
mechanism
out.
to have that lot cut and then just apply it to their property tax?
Not that I know of.
So that's where I was getting
That's
at.
a different, yeah.
That's
that-
where I was going next.
Yes.
So if you
yes.
don't get someone, so let's just say
But-
they go to court, they get the citation, the judge gives them an additional couple of days to get the lot cut, and they cut it, great. And if they don't have the ability to cut it, I'm sure the city steps in and helps out in some regard. But let's just say you can't make contact with the owner. And now what happens? Because if you can't make contact with the owner, you can't get the court date established. So now those types of situations have to be forwarded over to the department to be cut, right?
Right.
Okay, and in that regard, does the department contract out to current contractors, or do you have additional contractors that you can reach out to get this job done? Because I think if you're reaching out to folks that you already have, would you not be throwing off work being done on some other project with those contractors?
Or do we need an on-call contractor to handle this?
Which is where I hope we're getting ready to go towards. Like, how do we make sure that we're not throwing off work somewhere while we're trying to get additional work done?
And also, Commissioner, keep in mind that we're talking about property that someone is occupying it. So it would be different with vacant property. So I just wanted to make certain we had that distinction.
Well, and that was kind of the confusing part about when she first started speaking was
Right.
that there's
I know
often.
you had a question about blight. Is that what you were talking about?
So I spoke up outside of the mic, but I was saying, isn't that what the blight ordinance covers? Because if it's blighted property at that point, when we are going and adding on that additional tax to their, is that,
Blight ordinance is only.
Want to speak on that?
it's only for unoccupied? Okay.
And it's for IPMC.
So blight doesn't cover occupied?
So Samuel Meller, Senior Staff Attorney. The blight ordinance has many different aspects. Just grass. First of all, we're only going, at this moment, we're filing blight complaints on unoccupied residential properties. And most of these properties that we're doing at this time have been vacant for some time. So if a property is kept up to code in other respects, but just the grass is uncut, at this moment that's not coming on really to the blight list, because we have so many other properties that are coming on the list, and we are not at a point of having 30 or 40 different complaints being heard in court at one time. That is the goal of the thing, but we are training all of our teams to get up to that point and getting all of these systems done, which is taking some time. Additionally, the blight ordinance has a specific amount that is to be added to the ad valorem tax, and a specific amount taken off for the ad valorem tax. So neither I nor the judge has the authority of adding more or less to that ad valorem tax, just the 7 mills. And so regardless of the condition of the property, it's just 7 mills. And then they have the discount when they come back into compliance for those vacant properties. And again, one of the difficulties of the vacant properties are properties that are
those individuals that live out of town, so they're not in Augusta, Richmond County. Where do they fall on that spectrum as far as either code enforcement is concerned, or going to court, things of that nature? Because if you don't actually live here, what happens at that point?
So our jurisdiction. The code enforcement's jurisdiction, like criminal jurisdiction, it does not matter where the defendant actually lives. Defendant, respondent, however you want to play it. It only matters that the offense occurs in Richmond County. After discussions with code enforcement, the problem with code enforcement, and in this context, I use the term problem, but the challenge was that how does code enforcement serve a complaint outside of Richmond County? So we have had contacts with other sheriff's offices and marshal's offices outside of Richmond County, Gwinnett County, Fulton County, and in South Carolina. Those officials, they sometimes will do us the favor and not charge us the fee and serve our citation. We mail them the citation, and they serve the citation as if it was a civil citation, and they don't charge us the fee. Alternatively, we can employ civil process service to serve those individuals outside of Richmond County, so that the reality of the service issue, I mean, we could do certified mail, we could do whatever, but the challenge of the service issue is that when we go to court and we have properly served them, the prosecutor who is in court at the ordinance court can properly ask for a bench warrant. And it requires some proof of proper service. That is what Georgia law has indicated, and our courts have indicated as proper service, is tag service, and if not tag service, then publishing. And of course, our courts are very cautious about serving bench warrants for publishing service unless we've had significant effort to do the tag service, personal service, what you see in movies, you've been served, that kind of service. And because our code enforcement team does not serve outside of Richmond County, we have to engage either other public agencies that do that civil process service outside of Richmond County, or have to utilize, the private civil process service to do so.
We're still here, sorry. So question for you. I guess, you just gave us a whole lot of information. I don't even know where to begin to respond. Yeah, it's going to have a whole nother meeting to kind of get back on this. I guess my biggest concern is always going to simply be, how do we get this stuff done in a proactive sense versus us having to make the phone call? Because I guess I get a little and I'm not just saying me, I know we all get frustrated because when we get these calls and we call in these properties, we typically get the same answer as, well, we don't have the funding or something like that. So I guess our main concern up here is, number one, giving all of the, responsibilities that y'all have told us about today, how do we consolidate those services to make sure that, everything is getting done as quickly and effectively as possible? But if there's like any gaps in funding, we need to know about those so that we can attempt to start budgeting for that. And I guess this is an administrative question. Can we get to the same place just by giving specific budget increases to get some of this stuff done like we're talking today? Or would it make more sense to consolidate these services under one house and then fund that department? Because, I had no idea the fire department was cutting grass.
I'll second that. Oh,
Yeah.
Third.
Come on, we may be on to something. I didn't know that the fire department was cutting grass. So I didn't know that. So what are you, should we be consolidating and funding that department? Are we able to just kind of fund here and there?
Well,
What do you think is the best route to take?
Well, and actually, one of my questions are in regards to like the fire department cutting their grass, utilities cutting their own grass. Why isn't central services taking care of all of that and, further alleviating one more cog in, the multiple wheels and the multiple employees that we have out there? The fire department, he stated he only has one staff member that goes around cutting grass. So why not add that one guy to a crew from central services and, they be, at least stretch their bandwidth a little bit there.
Commissioners, I completely agree. And if you recall, I gave a presentation to this body last year entitled My Right Sizing Plan, of which a large bulk of that plan was to consolidate maintenance, grounds maintenance efforts specifically. While we took a step in the right direction by removing right-of-way services from Parks and Recreation and consolidating them with the engineering department, our environmental services and engineering department continues to grow. And while Dr. Malik and his team have done a mammoth effort in managing all of those duties and responsibilities, we're still very segmented throughout Augusta. And so I'm glad that you're able to see the bigger picture in that. But at the same time, yes, it will involve more resources, which brings us to current challenges to include both fiscal resources as well as human resources.
Well, I actually have a follow-up question to the attorney and maybe to Donna from Code Enforcement. Just listening to the way that you described all of that, it really sounds like we are very limited in the actions that we can actually take in getting these properties, these nuisance properties, adequately taken care of through the courts or legal means. And, all I heard was, well, there's a lot of problems with it. There's a lot of things that we have to do, and we don't have the resources. We can't do this. We can't do that. Sometimes other people help us. Sometimes they don't. And so at the end of that, we're still stuck with constituents calling us saying, hey, what's the deal? And, our response is, hey, we've turned it over to the department to handle it. Oftentimes we don't hear back on where that currently is along the line of many departments that touch it. So I guess the real question is, if you issue an order against a property owner, is the order against the property or is it against the owner?
So I'm gonna drill down a little bit, Commissioner. So the magistrate court, because by law.
Now speak simply. We're not.
Okay.
We're not attorneys or junior attorneys up here.
Sure. So the problem is that in Georgia we have separated out different courts with different responsibilities and different powers. Magistrate court has very limited authority, and that's where code enforcement has to prosecute county ordinance violations. The other alternative is the condemnation process, which is what that public nuisance condemnation, that is what that means. That's what that third party attorney does for us. And that happens in magistrate court. In order to, The order often has, and so that's the question, does the order have to do with the property or has to do with the person? The blight ordinance has to do with the property because it's attached to an increase in property tax. The code enforcement violation is not about the property because a property can't commit a crime. It has to do with the person. And so that's why, again, that's why it's a little bit different when you say the order, because the functions of getting that order, the way that the law sets it out, is somewhat limited.
So why is it that the fines are levied against the property, like on their property tax bill, when we come in and we do cuts? I know a lot of times in vacant lots, when we have to go onto a piece of property that's owned by somebody, they're just not taking care of it, and we go cut it, we apply a fine there or to cover the cost of us doing the work. Why is it applied to the property and not to the owner?
Excellent question. So how much, and this has to do with liens, right? So when like, for example, if you go into a mechanic shop and the auto mechanic does work on your car and you don't pay, the auto mechanic has a right under law to put a lien of the value of the services on that car. Because that's what the service is, and it secures the property against the property addition. We can do the same thing when we go out and cut the grass, because we are doing service on that, we are doing necessary service under the law to that property, and we can put a lien on that property. We can put a lien on that thing for the work that we have done. The reason that we are able to put the lien doesn't actually have to do with the state of the property. It has to do with the work that the value of the work that we did on the property. And so that's why it's.
Are you banking on at some point that property is going to change hands and you're going to be able to capture that lien?
Yes, and so the requirement then is.
Well, and let me just pause there for a sec. I think our concern is some of these properties will never transfer hands. You have property owners, they'll pay the property taxes or they'll pay the whatever, whether they'll, and they'll hold on to these properties. I mean, there have been property owners in this town that have held on to properties for decades. And not only that, but there's no ramifications to that person that owns this property with this lien on their property. I mean, it's not like it's making them look bad anywhere. I mean, other than if they decide to sell the property, then they're, oh, well, I guess I have to pay this few $100s for when they cut my grass back in 2024. But what I'm saying is there no way to go after these people that are nuisance property owners?
So we did pass, there's the question is there no way to go after these nuisance property owners regarding the lien? Other than the citation process and the fact that this commission has passed extra fines that are basically fees attached to nuisance property owners when you have to cite again and again and again for the administrative cost of citing them over and over and over again. The alternative is, and this is extremely difficult, is foreclosing on a junior lien. So just like homeowners associations can lien on a property for not paying their property dues on their HOA fees and then foreclose on that property to collect on that dues, there are mechanisms to force the sale of property, basically through a sheriff's sale for having the lien on it. It is very, I believe, and I understand that there was some discussion amongst other attorneys countywide about this. It is very rare for sheriff's offices to foreclose on junior liens. That is a lien that is less than the major amount or is not sort of the mortgage on the property. If it is the only lien on the property, then the foreclosure sheriff's sale can go through. To my knowledge, I don't know if that is a practice that we do. and that might be a policy that we might do in the future. But that, to your point, how do we change hands for that property by force? That is by foreclosing on that lien.
So if I can jump in here and ask a question. So if we're looking at the fact that you have property that is vacant or that is blighted, that doesn't change hands, it's just sitting there, then the question at hand is how do you get it to move ownership? How do you get it to transfer hands? I know places like Detroit. Detroit was filled with blight, and they have a program in place to where the city would buy those vacant properties from whoever the owners are, the trust or whatever. The city would buy those vacant properties, and then they would sell those properties to people with the understanding that they would develop on those properties, and they would have a set amount of time to actually do the development. Is that something that the city of Augusta could potentially look into if we did it by way of like the land bank, or we did it through housing and development or something? Could we somehow create a program to where even if there's a vacant lot next to you and you own your home, you can apply to buy that lot and expand your home or to build generational wealth for your family? Is there a program that we could adopt? Or I know the land bank has already been doing that for like affordable housing. Can we expand the scope of that $1 million we gave them a few years ago?
Yes, sir, Commissioner. And in this particular case, the land bank offers discounts to adjacent property owners. They have that within their current policy guidelines. However, that's only done for properties that the land bank owns. A lot of these cases are property owners that are privately holding their property that continue to evade our current ordinances, our current citations, and do not want to comply. But yes, if the city is interested in purchasing those properties directly for that purpose, then absolutely. But right now, the land bank does just that with properties that the city already owns.
You see, and I guess my thing is we don't have to be aggressive in like, you sell us your property or we're going to drop the hammer on you. But at some point, we have to get, we have to communicate. We have to plan a sandbox together, because if they're holding property and we have tools that we can use if we own the property, then I believe that we should potentially be looking into trying to scratch their back so they'll scratch ours. And maybe we will see some of these lots go down a little bit with the understanding that there will be development happening. Because I guess, we understand the right-of-way stuff at this point. I think we're all there. The biggest concern is what do we do about these vacant lots in all of our districts?
Well, and I hate to...
And I don't want to cut you off, Ms. Downs. Let me
Sure.
add one more thing to that as well. And what are we doing also to have a timeline in place for something to be done with the properties that we already own? Because there are a number of properties that we already own that if we expose them today, we would be looking like hypocrites talking about folks who don't, properties that we don't own. So what is the plan in place for that as well?
So it leads us to our current challenges, but at the same time, our 311 data is showing that we currently have over 300 vacant inspections with over 1,000 open orders for cutting.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Donna.
And so that further highlights what continues to reverberate in our conversation is the need for resources. And so I'm certain every department can talk more about additional funding, additional human resources, or even if it's just the fiscal resources to have more crews, because the X amount of crews may simply not be enough.
All right, well, do we want to jump into the second section and talk about the overall challenges? Oh.
I had a quick question for Ms. Rhodes about a property that, real quick, maybe Ms. Rhodes can explain some of this that maybe my colleagues might be going through too. But for years, even before I came on the commission, there's a particular property, for instance, that we have had. It's a major disaster over there, wouldn't you say? And like the other day, you were saying you couldn't even get. I'm getting to my point, okay?
No,
Thank you.
I didn't know which.
I'm talking about the grass cutting. I'm getting to the point about the tax, deducting property tax from this gentleman, and maybe y'all can learn from this. I want Ms. Rhodes to let y'all know what I've been going through. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But I want to say, I want to also thank you so much for your help. what you've done. But explain to them about the property, what's been going on with this particular gentleman and how we've had to go back and forth for years and with what's going on. I want y'all to hear so you can understand what she has been going through.
So this property is on Walton Way. The numerics, I think, are 3633. Yes. Do you remember? 3633 Walton Way. When I was a code enforcement officer, I dealt with this property, and everyone over in the code enforcement office has dealt with him. It's Mr. Regan. He owns this property that has been sitting vacant and deteriorating yearly for years. So overgrown that you're not able to see the house. The adjacent property owners and the property owners in the rear have always complained, and we could oftentimes send environmental services over there to cut the property because it was a vacant property. Mr. Regan would always leave town. We were not able to find him a lot of times in the past. And so environmental services went to cut it this particular time and wasn't able to get to the gate because he put a lock on the gate because someone obviously told him, if you lock it up, there's nothing they can do. Well, when environmental services had the contractors go in and cut the front, we were able to see that there was a pool in the rear that was in terrible condition, didn't have a fence around it. There was more structures back there that were deteriorating. And Keith Petty with code enforcement had worked on this case for many years, but was never able to contact Mr. Regan. So we got together with code enforcement. When the issue came up, we offered our services to go issue the citations for code enforcement that they have pending. We have more resources. Mr. Regan was in another jurisdiction. We were able to reach out to that jurisdiction, and Lieutenant Billman made contact with him. He came to our office. We issued the citations. We got in court. He still tried to hem-haw around, just make excuse after excuse after excuse, and we held him to the fire. The judge held him to the fire, and he has since hired an architect. He has maintained the premises. He has since hired an architect, paid the architect, and the contractor that's going to perform the work to bring the property into complete compliance. We go back and we revisit this in court every 30 days. And of course, the judge is cooperating, and he is on the road to, be in compliance. It's a long, drawn-out issue, so I tried to make it as short as possible and give the credit to everyone that is involved in that case. Hope I did that.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to bring that up so that we can see what this process, what I've been going through with you. And I'm hoping, I don't know if this gentleman will continue, if he'll ever keep it. I know he's going to sell the property, so he's going to hold on to it, but we're going to have to continue staying on him for many years, and that's what's so frustrating,
right,
is that property owners who do not want to sell their property, and you continue to stay on them, and they don't want to do anything. Well, I have to get you involved.
And the surrounding residents, it is negatively impacting their quality of life, which is a huge issue. So that's, they are just crying out. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Administrator, you want to walk us through the current challenges?
Sure. If you would, please call back up Engineering and Environmental Services, who has a described need for what their additional funding could look like and what those additional services could amount to.
All right. Engineering, who wants to speak towards this fund item?
Yes, sir. So I'll refer to my second sheet where I have the resources. But the top, it shows the assets like linear miles of roads and stormwater and all that.
We need an additional copy up here too, please.
That's good. Here. Yes, so,
Who needs it?
So, another resource is, I started with the ponds. So we are maintaining the city-owned ponds. Engineering is maintaining it once a year, and it's around 750. Not for every pond, but there are certain ponds, we get call requests, for the second cut. So if we have to cut twice a year, basically, it's going to go from 750 to 1.5. Maybe we get some volume discount, but somewhere 1.3 to 1.5 to increase one cycle to two cycle. I also, I'm working through it, so I'm presenting as a pilot District 2 because where we get a lot of calls and it's really reactive to maintain the right-of-way on that. And I drove through all that area, so it's around 186 center line miles in that district. And since these are inner roads and all that, so it's not going to be 2,500, probably anymore. So by reading through some of the contracts, so my educated guess is 1,300 to 1,500, and then I say, okay, 4 times a week, like a year, like every quarter or every other month. So it's going to vary from 1 million to 1.5, and that's going to be the contract services because even you all approve the in-house forces, it's going to be very difficult to really fill and have a functional crew. So it has to be contract services. So something like that, I think we can start for 2025, and then we work through for the rest of that. And Charlie can speak more to that. We take care of some of the outer areas with our in-house crews and all that, but District 2 is really need more attention to do that. District 1 also, but some of the major highway, we already taking care of the District 1 on that. We look at that. Then the vacant lot, right now is 350. To get to the desired level and cut some of the lots, really, like Charlie mentioned a couple of weeks back or 2 months back, like 900 something. So I'm saying, we have to increase put other 650,000 to bring it to close to $1 million, and then we should be able to meet the expectations, at least the current expectations on that. The niche maintenance. Right now, engineering is assigned 9 crews, but I know Warden is working through it. I think right now we're close to 6. But to keep up with that, our request is 14 crews, and then I put some associated costs to that. There's a one-time cost to establish additional crews, and then salary of the work detail supervisors. So roughly to start up is 2.3 million on that. I also went ahead and kind of throw some suggestions, the funding, where to really, look at least, that's kind of my individual thought, where to find the money to fund some of these services, and then we had to cut somewhere else to make this work. Also, I'm suggesting that really we need to revisit our codes. Because right now our code does have provision for the vacant lot, uncapped lot, but not for the other property owners. Other cities and locality has, like Savannah has, where they include all property owners are responsible to keep up their front yard up to the edge of the road. That I think it's going to take only a little tweak in that section to do that. And that the page last, really, that's our standard enforcement code 1-6-1. That goes up to 60 days. and then I think it's some 6 months jail and some penalty on that. So that section applies to any code violation.
I have a question. First, I can't stop smiling. Like I'm scared that I'm gonna have a muscle spasm because this means so much to my constituents. I'm speaking up on behalf of them because, again, about 85 to 90% of my emails are about lot maintenance. And when I drive through my area, it is oftentimes disheartening. And so as a representative of District 2, this means a whole lot. So that's that part. So thank you for this. I do want to know, has the administrator taken a look at the funding sources and have you vetted this? Okay, so there may be more work, but even the fact that it was presented just gives me hope and makes me so happy. So I know that further discussions will have to be had, but thank you for that, Dr. Malik.
Well, and to chime in where you left off there, I think as we're looking at the things that we get the most calls about, I think that as we're looking at the budget, we need to make sure that we fund them as appropriately as we can. And I will encourage the administrator's office and the finance office to look at some of these funding sources that Dr. Malik has put out there as possible alternatives. I know that a lot of times the general inclination is to say no, but I'm hoping that our staff will really take a close look at some of these opportunities here to capture some of these cost savings to help implement some of these programs to help our constituents.
Yeah. Yeah, just want to add to that regarding the funding. I think we should make effort to free up stormwater fee funds as much, because that fund has no restriction. We can use for all maintenance, and then shift some of the burden to other funds that may be restricted and we cannot use for the maintenance purposes. So that's something really we need to look at. Because stormwater fee we can use for grass cutting, all of this stuff. But like splash, we cannot use it. So.
All righty. Next department. Guess that'll be human resources. You want to talk about your current challenges, or are there any other departments? Well, I think most of the departments talked about some of their challenges in regards to the grass cutting. I know that engineering carries the brunt of the right-of-way, and just kind of curious in regards to the vacant lot clearing, though. The funding sources that are currently used there, is it strictly out of the budget, or are you able to capture any funds from the landfill operations? And help us understand that, because I know that there's some loose tie to the landfill and vacant lots.
Yes, sir. So it's kind of combination of both. So we do include that services cost in the solid waste fee when it go out, and so that's roughly around 200,000, at least for 2 years, I see, and then additional coming out of the waste collection funds.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, the human resources titled under current challenges is not the human resources department per se, but more so staffing needs. Most of the departments that came up and spoke to you today included their current challenges in their overall responsibility overview. But again, Dr. Malik, as being the bulk share of our maintenance challenges, spoke heavily about both fiscal resources as well as human resources. I would like to point out that he mentioned the need for, or the option to receive some additional crews. If you would allow Warden Joseph to come up and speak to what that would look like if the department was allocated some additional crews. I know that there are some current challenges surrounding equipment as well as the amount of inmates that would go with each officer sent.
All right. Warden, you want to speak towards that?
Yes, sir.
And while he's up, could you also correct my statement when I made the comment that Augusta Utilities does not have a crew? When I have been corrected, they do have a crew that manages the canal. So my apologies for that.
Yes, we do have a crew. So in regards to Dr. Malik's,
Hold on, Warden. So Augusta Utilities maintains the canal?
is the canal zone.
Okay, so the Canal Authority doesn't contribute there to help any of that maintenance?
Yeah, the canal is responsible for funding all the equipments and so forth. We provide them with a crew. That makes sense.
So is it utilities or the Canal Authority?
It's the Canal Authority.
Okay.
Canal Authority. I misspoke. So they do have a crew.
Okay.
So in regards to Dr. Malik's request, I'm all for supporting any department that needs our assistance. It's going to be a challenge to give them 14, that would be 3 additional crews at 5 to 6 inmates each. Possibly 3 to 4, we could probably accommodate that. I don't necessarily see 6. They average about 5 to 6. That would be a challenge. So that would be my only concern.
And the equipment needs?
The equipments are purchased by the department. We don't handle none of the equipments that they use. Now, as currently, there are 2 details that the department has that are in needs of equipment. So
when your inmate crews go out, that equipment doesn't belong to the correctional facility?
no, only the cemetery. Only the cemetery. Regarding the equipment for Dr. Malik, he currently has 2 details that are in need of equipment. So I guess my point by bringing that up is to say that require obviously more equipments if we're supposed to fund them more inmates.
Okay. And hopefully when budgets are presented, that equipment will be included as a need.
Right.
That way we can at least be looking towards that.
Yes, sir.
All right. Madam Administrator, anything else?
I would like to ask the warden, if you would allow me to, does he have crews available FY24 to allocate to engineering?
No, ma'am, we don't. Not right now as we speak. Okay. Not at the level of 5 to 6, maybe 3 to 4 inmates, but not.
Would a crew of 3 to 4 help engineering, even if you couldn't get 5 or 6 on a crew?
For this year, 9 are allocated already, but we,
well, you
we're only
14.
getting 5 or 6, so still is making up all that.
I'm just trying to help you out here, Doc.
Right, yeah, so that will help, but what I'm saying is in 14, and we provide all the equipment and all that, so we do have 2 in-house.
Back to the 9 allocated crews, and you needing 14. If the warden could send you some crews of 3 or 4 inmates instead of 5 or 6, would that be acceptable?
I'm gonna ask Charlie to.
We'll take anything we can get.
That's what I want to hear, Charlie.
And I'm so glad that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm so glad that you said we'll take anything we can get, because that's a great lead into what I was going to say. I'm sitting here thinking about the Marshal's Office's VET program. And then from VET program, I'm thinking a volunteer program. So do we have anything in place that looks like that, be it vets, volunteers, any type of program where people can sign up? And I'm sure it's more detailed than that. But if the vets are volunteering here, then that lets me know there are people in our city that want to volunteer. So could that be something that we also look at?
I would suggest reaching out to Truck Carlson. He's very enthusiastic in regards to this, and he has shown himself worthy to be able to get vets excited to go help and clean up parts of our city. So, and I appreciate him. And for those that don't know, he's part of the Savannah River Keeper and Veterans for Water. I can't remember what. Veterans for Clean Water, and they do a fantastic job out there.
Commissioner, if I may, just for clarity,
yes.
We have allocated 11 certified detail officers to Augusta Engineering.
Okay.
That's not including the 2 civilian crews that he has.
All right. Dr. Malik.
Just to clarity, those 2 are actually engineering employees. So we, we created way back to as an emergency need, but since we are short, we just using them for that. But so the warden only, so those are part of the engineering. So I'm not counting those two towards what warden is.
All right, thank you. Madam Administrator, I think we're on, do we even want to talk about realistic expectations, or I know that we're looking at a budget in front of us, so I think now's the time to at least touch on a little bit. I think we have some time.
Yes, sir. I do think that it would be prudent for us to have that conversation now, especially ahead of our budget retreat, which it can also be expounded upon at that time as well. But as Dr. Malik has outlined, if you would like increased pond maintenance, if you would like the District 2 pilot program, if you would like the vacant lot maintenance to increase and so on and so forth, even to include the ditch maintenance, at what level? What does that expectation look like? Because while we do have some available funding, as you know, with the 1% budget cuts that were accounted for in FY24, as well as we're already looking at creative ways to increase our revenue options for FY25. So now will be a great time to know what the commission, and while you're at a limited stance at this point, what are those ideas?
Well, I think that, when we voted and approved that 1% cut, those funds are still there to be used if needed. There was also discussion about having a mid-year review, and we're in June. Last time I checked, that's in the middle of the calendar year. So I think it's a great time to have that review to kind of see where the departments are in their spending, as well as their forecast for the rest of the year. And then also take into account the requests that are on the table here today. I'm not sure you would see a single person up here, and I'm going to speak for Commissioner Johnson as well, that would not want to see some of this funding allocated immediately to help take care of some of these ongoing vacant lot issues, ongoing right-of-way issues. We've all stated these are a majority of the calls that we get. Anybody want to chime in on that one?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
I just want to remind us that we are, and we should, in the next 2-3 weeks, come back with an amended budget session.
Yes.
Because we've been saying we can take money from the cuts that we've been having, but just remember, we promised that we would come back and do an amended budget that we have never done since the 4 years. So, and then I think once, maybe in recent commission meeting, somebody asked, a department asked for some money, and we said, well, we can get it from the 1%. So the 1% is going to be, when you do an amended budget, we're not going to have anything, especially if we start talking today. Not trying to put the rain on your sunshine, but remember that we still need to do the amended budget. I do agree that we need to do something. I have District 1, 2, 4, and 5, and I see grass need to be cutting all the time, but we still need to be good stewards of our money. And if we got money in departments and we're just holding money and not cutting grass or whatever, we need to see why we're not doing that as well.
And do know that that item is a notch on the agenda for the budget retreat. So you will be able to see a high-level snapshot of where the departments are regarding your mid-year budget review.
And just as a caveat, department heads don't go filling in extra zeros just to make it look like y'all. I'm just saying. Not that would happen. All right. I think that one of the things that we've heard numerous times today is the mention for some code revisions, as well as just taking a look at the overall code in regards to enforcement. What is a nuisance property? What's when do certain avenues of our legal teams get involved, our law enforcement? So in regards to that, Administrator, do you have anything that you want to offer towards the code revision, or?
Sure. So I will say that in our recent GIC conference, there were discussions as to what other municipalities are doing that have been proven as good tools to get some of our blight as well as nuisance properties taken care of. I've had conversations, limited conversations with planning and development in regards to our downtown entertainment district and how we can review some of our ordinances to ensure that they have some additional teeth. While we're not at a point today to divulge some of those specifics, the engineering department has already had conversations with me regarding how some of those codes could be revised to ensure that their services are not abused. And so, Dr. Malik, do you have some additional information regarding ideas surrounding code enforcement, or excuse me, code revisions that would be of value to some of the challenges you face in the field?
Well, I think that one-sheeter that he handed out earlier outlines some of the questions that we get as commissioners up here, and I think that we need to make sure that we're holding to that too, that when we're asked to take care of certain issues, we need to make sure we're not working on private property. We need to make sure it is Augusta property and make that clear to the constituents that are asking us to do certain things. But then again, we also need to make sure that our systems, our GIS systems and things clearly define where these Augusta properties are. I know there's sometimes where we're looking at properties and it doesn't clearly have the easements or things like that on there either. So I think on both ends, we need to make sure that we're covered there. But also, if we're going to take a look at the codes, I think we need to have all of the current codes on the table before we even start changing any of them, just so we know what they are. There's health and safety codes out there. There's law enforcement codes that seem to intermingle from time to time, and we need to make sure that we're not cutting the feet out from those that are able to enforce what's currently on the books.
And I think I'm trying to get a head nod from code enforcement, but that's already on the plan for a comprehensive code review. Is that right, Director Delaney? Not for. Please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Good afternoon. The zoning ordinance is what is being reviewed, not the code. The code would not come out of our department. That would probably be legal that would handle that. But the zoning ordinance is what is up for review now.
While we can add that as a topic of conversation, that may be one that we want to take under advisement at this time, but we can definitely start to compile those thoughts and ideas and work towards something in the near future.
And I would definitely like to see us head in that direction. I know there are changes coming in that department, but not only looking at the current codes, but look at some of our surrounding counties and cities codes that pertain to this that do not seem to have some of these same ongoing issues. And even some of the comparable cities like Savannah and Columbus, Macon, what are they doing to help address some of their problems, and what have they done in the past to get them into a better place? All right. Anything further? Well, I just want to thank everybody for participating. I think this has been probably one of the better conversations I've had. I know that our staff, they've been involved, and I appreciate their openness to really discuss the real issues out there. And thank you for the work that's being done and that we're going to do. And just for the constituents out there listening, and I know some of our news is here, this is real work that we're wanting to see take place, and we're going to continue pressing forward. So thank you all.